Are you ready? Can crush us. It don't really get no better than this the podcast that you're looking for if you're really heavy into wrestling. Hosted by the Mark. Energy that's so amazing. Gotta keep it entertaining. Rep the Can Crusher Nation. Yeah, you know what's going down in the ring. Lights out when you hit a ding ding. Knock 'em out like boom bada bing. Hold it down, you can crown me the king. Gotta shout out to the Miz and Duke the Dumpster. We choke slamming everybody, power driving, hit 'em with a face buster. Yeah, this the show you need and it ain't no need for waiting. Mark, hold it down for the Can Crusher Nation. All about wrestling and keep it entertaining. Can Crushers Wrestling Podcast. Time to break 'em, let's go. Yeah. Can Crushers. Yeah. Can Crushers. Let's go.
Hi everyone, this is Ringside Rain and you're listening to Can Crushers Podcast. And now, here is your host, Mark Martinez.
Welcome back to another Can Crushers Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Mark Martinez, and this is a Spotlight edition. Yeah, that means we're going to talk to a rising independent star from anywhere in the world. We're international. We talk to everybody from Australia as a legend to right in our backyard in Pennsylvania. We love talking to independent wrestlers to find out their story. Guys, I'm going to pause for a second. Man, you've all seen that we've transitioned over to YouTube a little bit as just a podcast on YouTube. Holy schmoly, guys. Thank you. Thank you for all the likes, subscribes, and all of that, the follows on YouTube. Amazing. Thank you very much. Make sure you continue doing that. You know, just do it. Tell other people about us. It's awesome to be able to spread the word of wrestling, I guess. And the real reason is I love being a platform for independent wrestlers so they can come on and tell their stories. They can get a look and this, that, and the other. That's the real meaning of Can Crushers. That's why we started, and that's why we're going to continue to do it, because we love focusing on the independent wrestlers. Yeah, we will get legends on. We will get promoters, referees, this, that, and the other on as well. But it's about showcasing the independent wrestlers. That's what these spotlights are about. And this one's a good one. This one's cool. We kind of got hinted a couple weeks ago that we were going to have this person on when we had Matty Monarch on. It is the one-man zoo, L-Ride. I can't wait. He's got an allure that I don't know much about, a presence I got to know about this one-man zoo. Doesn't really like animals. Hell, he could be mocking all of this. And that's why I love doing this, and that's why I'm super excited we transitioned over to YouTube, along with all the other places we are. We're paying some bills right now. Spotify and iTunes and Podurama, Boxcast and Stitcher, and all those cool places. If you want to listen to it as a podcast on the go, yada, 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 you still have those opportunities. If you want them playing at your house, just turn YouTube on. And guys, again, continue to, across the board, all platforms, like, subscribe, and do all that cool stuff so you get the notifications when we are on. YouTube listeners, man, the library is coming. The library is coming fast and furious as each one is getting put up, and we love that you guys are going crazy about those. Other bills to pay. Collar and elbow, hats, hoodies, tees, all the cool stuff that Al Snow and his hooligans have down there. Use our promo code. It's Can Crushers, all one word, capital C and Can, capital C and Crushers. Anytime you buy those cool shirts, the Shad Gaspar shirts, the Animal shirts. My favorite shirt, you guys that have been with us for a long time know about it. It's the Macho Man inspired one. Al Snow and Head in the sunglasses. It's purple. It's amazing. Guys, the quality of the shirts are amazing. The graphics stay. I've had them all for years now. Unbelievable. Save 10% when you use Can Crushers. Don't forget to shop at our store too. It's on CrowdMade. So if you're looking for a Can Crushers hoodie or a shirt or a tank top, more to come in the near future. Over at CrowdMade, type in Can Crushers. You can also find the link in the show notes. Guys, you know that I've been living off of Dubby. Man, I ordered my new flavor. I listen, I know I said I was going to just stick with Beach and Peachin'. Beach and Peach. There's no peach in. Beach and Peach. because I love it so much, but I'm about 3/4 of the way done. I ordered the one that is like orange creamsicle and mango next. So, guys, I love this stuff. 2 scoops in my water bottle in the morning, shake the hell out of it, and it does wonders for me. There's no crash, there's no calories, there's no artificial anything. Listen, the canned and bottled drinks, the carbonation and all that, it's a part of the past in my life. It really is. Dubby has carried me over. Wake up in the morning, get ready to do the trash collecting, and then all the stuff that I do late into the evening for basketball games and everything. One shot, essentially. It's about 20 ounces that I do every morning. 2 scoops, good to go. It keeps me rocking and rolling all day. It has put me in a better mood. And, this isn't what they tell me to say, by the way. It's put me in better moods. It's kept my energy up. It's really awesome. So make sure you check out Dubby as well. Check out all the cool flavors. They do have a starter pack that if you want to try, I believe it's $20, but you have a promo code that's going to save you 10%. It's Can Crushers. So check it all out before you get into the big tubs that I'm doing. It's unbelievable. Join us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter because it's really cool to be part of the conversation. Don't forget to drop your DMs because Ask Can Crushers is coming up. Ask Can Crushers will be released March 30th. So make sure you get your questions in by the 29th. This way we can answer all your amazing questions on Ask Can Crushers. That's about it, right? No else, no, because we don't do his commercial anymore. We love them, but you guys have heard it enough. You still know about the Can Crushers and Collar and Elbow. So, yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back, and we'll have the one-man zoo L-Ride coming up.
What's up, guys? My name is Keikoa, the Hawaiian Warrior, and you are listening to What? Hang on a second. I got to stop this. I'm looking at my cue card that Mark handed me. It says I have to do this 80s promo style. So if you're tuning in, this is the Can Crusher podcast, the only podcast that you should be listening to for all your professional and independent wrestling content. So make sure you tune in every single time that they post a new episode. Hit that subscribe button and listen to the Can Crusher podcast, brother.
Welcome back to Can Crushers, guys. You heard how excited I was to talk to this man, but I'm also a little perplexed because I don't know. There's a lot lingering around what the hell a one-man zoo is, and is he going to come after me? My comparisons might be online, but they might not. There's just a lot of questions with my guest this week, and it is the one-man zoo, L-Ride. L-Ride, how the hell are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks to you for having me on.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like I said, we reached out. We had a little banter back and forth. Listen, before we get into everything, I got to find out, one-man zoo. Let's talk about it. Do you like animals? What's up with this?
Oh, absolutely. I've been obsessed with animals since I was like a toddler. From pets that you'd see in a Petco to the ones you would see at an actual zoo or an aquarium. My life quickly became clear that I loved animals and learning anything I could about them. I got the Zoo Book magazines, if anyone can remember those. I do
remember those now.
Oh, yeah. I used to love those things, had them all the time. I'm the guy that when I first went to a zoo with like friends way later after I started kind of doing this gimmick, everyone was like, are you going to keep giving us like random facts about them? I'm like, I can't help it. I think it's interesting, and I thought you guys would like it.
So you really, at wrestling shows, will come up and say, hey, a rhinoceros, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
At a wrestling show, it doesn't seem to come up as often. Most people are just more like, well, what are you going to do to show that zoo side today? I'm like, I don't know. Find out in the ring.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask then, essentially, what is your favorite animal?
See, that's a question that a lot of people have asked me, and I have a hard time answering because I like so many. But every time, if I had to like at least narrow it down to a type, I love reptiles. I love snakes and lizards and crocodiles. They were my favorite thing as a kid. I always thought it was fascinating how a snake could live so well and survive without having limbs. So, like, those little things about how those creatures survive their habitats and everything always impressed me. So I got obsessed with reptiles. I actually, before I became like got into like wrestling, I actually wanted to work at a zoo. I wanted to work in the reptile house. I wanted to work with snakes and the lizards and all that stuff. I loved like Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter was my idol. So it was like, those were those people that I would look to and be like, man, I wish I could have done that. And then things just didn't work the way I wanted. And now I'm a pro wrestler. So,
which goes hands in hand sometimes.
Yeah,
Snakes,
it kinda goes
alligators,
hand in hand.
crocodiles.
yeah, still wrangling something.
For sure. Snakes, man. I'll tell you this, and you will have to pay the piper one day from my wife. And this is no joke. I can't think of them. I can't talk about them. I can't do anything like that. Tonight, as this recording is happening, she will get beat up now in my sleep because I am one of those. Like, if it just comes up in conversation, there will be a snake in my dream. I'll wake up with like hot flashes and just... And listen, it's not like I've been bit by one or, I'm just that freaking scared of them because I am a wimp. Like, I
apologize for bringing up snakes.
My skin curled a little bit over here. More for my wife later on tonight compared to I can get over
I apologize to your wife in advance.
Yeah, be prepared. I'll give her your number, Facebook, and all of that. She'll be calling you.
Oh, no.
I like the reason, though, because, I've never thought, now that I'm on the path, I might as well stick and stay. I've never thought about that on snakes, that, like, they're just a line, essentially. How the hell did they survive
are literally
without?
A living spine with a head. That's basically all they are. And then they have their bodies are just so crazy. Like they basically have one lung that is just very long, and they have like a set of pair lungs like all these other animals would. But one of them is just very, very small and basically does nothing, while the other one is longer and goes throughout its longer body. It's crazy.
So did you said you wanted to work in a zoo. Did you actually want to get into like the vet side of it or just a handler?
I was wanting to be more of a handler. Like if I could have learned some of that stuff, that would have been cool too. But I was originally dreaming to be like a handler, helping get the animal place to place if they had to move it, or feeding them, taking care of them in general.
So the Steve Irwin then was your man,
yes,
for sure. Okay.
Yes, the Steve Irwin was like my idol. I watched him. Like his show before I would go to school in the morning because I'd be up so early and I'd find out like there's a special going on for like an hour. So I'd be watching him every morning before I went to school.
That's interesting. Besides reptiles, any do you like anything fuzzy and furry? Like,
absolutely.
I'm a big spider monkey guy.
Spider monkeys are great. I have always been partial to, ironically. So, like, I'm the guy who likes fuzzy things, too. I like I said, I love all animals. When it comes to, like, an actual, like, furry creature, I've always been kind of surprised by the types of, like, lemurs in the world there are.
Yep.
Because another show I loved as a kid was called Zaboomafoo. Again, don't know how many people who listen to this might remember that show.
I do. I do. You're hitting all the, like...
All the nostalgia?
Yeah, I mean, not for me, but, like, maybe it was on, like, a repeat for my son. So he would, yeah. So we watched it. Yep.
Zaboomafoo was, like, a type of lemur, and I always thought that was one of the fun, like, most fun-looking creatures. And I always liked all sorts of critters that could have been found anywhere, whether it's something that's like a weasel of some sort, or... I love porcupines and hedgehogs because it's so cool to see how they are they adapted to survive by having literal spiked armor on their bodies. And
is there anything normal you like? I'm not saying this means. How about a cat or a dog or anything like that?
Well, I like cats. I like dogs. Like one of my favorite animals actually to see at like those. So living in the St. Louis area, there's the St. Louis Zoo. And one of my favorite animals to honestly just look at is I love looking at the sun bear and the African painted dogs. And they're just, the painted dogs literally just look like an ordinary kind of dog, big ears, but they have this wonderful coloration that's like kind of browns and blacks. And it's just and I find them adorable. But in reality, you know that if they were in the wild, they'd be probably terrifying.
Oh, yeah, eating your arm off. Do you like butterflies at all?
Oh yes, of course.
Okay, just making sure. Making sure. Subtle hint
Oh,
there.
I always have to. If I said I didn't, I would probably be in a world of hurt later.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. All right, this is a wrestling podcast, so let's get into that. Who introduced you to professional wrestling? Mom, Dad, Uncle Joe, Aunt Sally? Like, how'd you find this crazy sport?
So the best story is it wasn't really like a parent or a grandparent, an uncle or anything. It was actually one of my best friends. He's been my brother for years, and he and I went to school like training together. And his name's Chris Exodus is his wrestling name. I know Maddie brought him up last
2 weeks ago.
like into 2 weeks ago in her episode with you. And I had met him on a school bus when we were in 4th, 5th grade, roughly. And he had wrestling action figures. So all I'm hearing is the sound of like that hard plastic of like them clashing against each other. And I would go ahead and turn it. I'd look over. I'm like, what are those? He goes, these are wrestling action figures. I'm like, what's wrestling? And he looked at me with like that slow, dramatic turn of, you don't know what wrestling is? And I was like, no, I don't know. He's like, you need to come over to my house. It's Monday. You got to watch Monday Night Raw with me. I'm like, I mean, I can talk to my mom and see what I could do. And next thing we know, we find out he lives like 2 blocks away from me. I could have walked to his house. I got dropped off. And the next thing you know, I'm watching Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, like every week for a couple of years with him. And we just became obsessed watching wrestling together.
Do you remember, by the way, I see the slow look being looked on you, by the way, too. Because
yes, exactly.
If anybody asks you now, like, hey, wrestling, you do it right back to them, right?
Yeah, it definitely transferred to me after doing it so long.
So, did you have some favorites growing up that maybe you liked that Chris didn't, and so on?
We had pretty much a lot of very similar favorites, at least that I thought of. We became instant fans of the Hardy Boys because we wanted to immediately. We were like, oh, we'd be totally a tag team if we like got into wrestling. So we of course immediately loved like Edge and Christian and the Hardys. I got particularly interested in a lot of random guys that people don't always expect when they look at me. Now when they hear this and then look at a video of me wrestling, they're like, oh, I can see your influence coming from it. But I loved Umaga a lot. Even though a lot of people won't remember a lot of his stuff because like the biggest thing people think of when they hear him is like the Trump stuff where it was him and Bobby Lashley back and forth, or it was like him and Jeff Hardy's feud. And like a lot of people don't think about Umaga a lot otherwise. But I loved like the big, like I liked him because he was so agile for how big he was. And his character showed a lot of things that just intrigued me. Like he didn't really speak English. He was speaking his Samoan, but you could still like just without saying English words, he came out and you'd be intimidated by this guy.
Oh, he was a bulldozer. Yeah.
And it was like watching him like run corner to corner to hit that hip attack. I'd be like, how do you not break that man? How is that man getting up? Because I thought that was enough, not let alone the Samoan spike.
Right. I think I have you pegged, by the way, when we get to the question who you are. I don't have Umaga, but I have somebody in the same family, so we'll leave it at that for a second.
Okay.
We'll leave it at that. But the other two, I'll let you be a surprise. So,
okay.
What, besides hanging out with Chris, playing with they were probably the Jax figures by then, right? You clearly didn't have LJNs like I did. I'm not saying that mean. That sounded backhanded. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Like it was all his. Like I've never actually owned a wrestling action figure. Every time I messed with them, they were with him. So it was like I very rarely had action figures of any sort, really, as a kid.
Do you have any now? Like that just blew my mind. Oh my god! How does a wrestler not have any?
Figures now. I'm one of those weird ones.
Oh, okay. Settle down, Mark. Settle down. So, what did you do besides hanging out with him, watching SmackDown Raw? You know, what kind of sports were you into? And I don't know if I spun this way with Maddie, but it's essentially the same thing. Were you in drama or anything like that? Because I link all of that to wrestling.
Oh, I was definitely into drama and plays and musicals and stuff. I love musicals now still. Like my family has always been in love with that, like just the art of being in like a play and taking on a role. But when I was younger, the only real stuff I was sports wise, I did like soccer and baseball for a while. I tried doing like the wrestling in middle school and didn't really stick with me. I was really mostly in the kung fu was actually what I was training in when I was first getting into like any real devotion to a sport. So I took a lot of that with me into what I was trying to incorporate into my wrestling gimmick when I first started.
You said kung fu, and you could see it in your style, definitely in the ring. And I just lost track of the question, so I'll come back to it. I told you I'm a gnat. I told you.
Yeah, you're fine.
When was the moment then that you're like, I'm going to get into wrestling? Clearly after you did some kung fu and all that, right?
Yes, I was doing the kung fu and everything and whatever martial arts classes that were around at the time for probably a couple of years before I got really into like the heavy idea of, what would it be like to actually wrestle? And it really all started when one day Chris finally came over to my house instead of one of the few times he did versus me coming to his. And I had just gotten a trampoline. If you see you might see where this is going.
Yep.
He goes, "Hey man, choke slam me." I go, "Why?" He goes, "It's a trampoline. It won't hurt. Choke slam me." I'm like, okay. Give him a choke slam. Bounces right back to his feet and everything. And goes, "We can have a whole match on here." And next thing you know, we're doing small shows on a trampoline for my sister and her friends when they're over and dumb stuff. And it eventually led into us like trying to make our own company, which has now proudly grown to be Unreal Company. And we went through all the stages, went trampoline to straight on the ground to mattresses being used as a ring, but like base, basically making a wooden base using like tires and pallets and carpet padding and all that stuff, eventually getting an actual ring. And it just shot up as soon as it went from that one choke slam on a trampoline. We ended up being head over heels for it. And he goes, "Hey, I found there's a wrestling school in St. Louis, like an actual pro wrestling school." I'm like, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" He goes, "Bruh, let's go." Next thing you know, that's history right there. We were sunk in.
That's a great story because I like it. How did the school that you went to take it that you were, and I know you're going to backhand me, and I understand this, a lot of people don't like it, but it is what it is. How did they like that you were a backyard wrestler going into the school? But then essentially, you knew some stuff before walking in the doors. Give me that whole scenario.
So that is an excellent question. No, I'm not going to backhand you because of the compliment. Like, I will proudly say I'm still technically a backyard wrestler in my head because that's where I started. I wouldn't be in this if I wasn't one at some point in my life. So getting into the school, we basically arranged, "Hey, can we come in and check this out? Would you be interested in like seeing what we can do," kind of thing. We got in there and they basically were just wanting to go over some basic stuff, see what we did know. And they, to their surprise, because it was just three of us, it was me, Chris, and our old buddy Dylan. Dylan didn't end up sticking with it, unfortunately, but he's got now like 3 kids and a whole life outside of wrestling, and that's he's perfectly happy with it.
That damn family orientation.
Yeah, he was always like kind of a family man, so I wasn't surprised that it like didn't really hit with him. Plus, he had some health problems that would challenge him a little more than we had. But when we started like doing the bumps, we took the falls, we did like simple lockups, and they were like, "You guys know a lot more than we thought you would for what we knew about you guys." I was like, "Well, me and Chris had first met another wrestler through a friend who gave us like knowledge on how to do like the basic, like the most basic of basics." So we knew like 4 general chain wrestling holds. We knew how to like actually do a collar elbow. We knew how to do bumps. So we just unfortunately never did that in a proper wrestling ring. We did it on dirt. And
which makes you tougher. And I hate to say it that way for everybody, but it does.
Yeah, like, no, it definitely, like, doing it in the, like, this man had, like, a farm and everything, so we went to his place. And he didn't have, like, a ring on his property, so we were just doing the bumps and everything, and, like, we took our first chops from him. Like, it was me, this was with a different pal of ours named Michael. And he did wrestle for a short while. He didn't get into like anything truly independent, like past what we were kind of doing. That was that mid transition from backyard to more independent style wrestling. And like he chopped all of us 3 times, and then we give him a chop. So he took 3 chops. We all took 3 chops. And I actually remember when I first took just a knife edge chop, he threw it in the middle of talking. Like we were just having a conversation, and all of a sudden he throws it. So I flinch, and he goes, "You're lucky I caught myself, or I could have slid my hand up at your arm and it would have broke your nose." I was like, well, I'm just like have these natural reflexes from doing like martial arts for so long. So it like, I was like, if it happened, I would have had to suck up that it happened. And so instead he gives me the Ricky the Steamboat double chop to make up for me flinching on the one. I was like, you, I was so like, you don't understand how mad I was. But I walked it off. I'm like, he's the trainer. I'm not going to hit him. I got my swing in on that chop later, and I was like, I put everything into that thing.
That's crazy. Did you ever have, before we get to first match, did you ever have the moment of, you know, I know you've been doing this on the dirt and the trampoline and maybe like a gym mat or anything. When you physically get to the main training and you're in rings and everything, did you ever have a moment you're like, oh, this is a little bit different than a trampoline or dirt?
Like when I got into the actual ring for the first time, and this is again going back to like the first day where they were like letting us do the bumps in a ring, I was like, this is what it feels like to be in an actual ring with their official like structure of the metal and the bars and the beams and everything. I'm just thinking, this is insane, because I never thought in my life I would have been in a true professional wrestling ring. And being able to like run the ropes and actually like just get all this childish wonder just flooding through my system to be like, I'm doing something in a place where all these other big names have come by and came through at some point. And it was just like a speechless moment of me and my brother just looking at each other. And we would go over at one point and we stood up on the middle rope together, because one of our favorite tag teams was Brian Kendrick and Paul London.
Nice.
And we would stand on those ropes and we'd look through each other, and we just felt, oh yeah, this feels right. This feels like something we were destined to try and do. And it was just amazing.
And you were in a hotbed. St. Louis is known for their professional wrestling, from all the bigs that are out there that make sure they get there each and every year. But if you watch indie wrestling, so much is there that it's just, it is a hotbed for stars from all over now.
Oh yeah, there's so many. Like, it's crazy to know some of the people who came to my school, like where I trained, and they might not have trained there, or some of them had, but knowing like who my trainer now knew and like helped teach and like got taught alongside is insane to me. I've now done 2 Delirious seminars, and I could not have been more amazed with just how close my trainer and Delirious were. I was like, you guys have been friends forever. And he goes, because we have been. So to know like a guy who like Delirious, and Seidel and all those kind of guys have came through this area and have used that same ring I first took my true wrestling career start in, blows my mind to this day.
Yeah, that you answered that perfectly. You were a child once you got in the ring the first time, right? You were, and I like that, because we all, you would be lying, and I'm going to call out everybody else that's listening to this. It's a wrestler that's been on here. You'd be lying if you didn't take that 5 minutes or whatever to run around and just do some stuff. I did.
Oh, absolutely. I was immediately doing rolls like a child who just learned how to do a somersault. I was going in circles like a goofball. I was getting winded because I was just constantly going corner, roll, rope roll, corner roll, and then later on that ended up being like an actual drill, and I was like, ha ha, I already know how to do this.
You're an oversized child anyway in life, aren't you? I can tell right now.
When people get to know me and I get past that like initial like your normal kind of situation where people first meet, they're very subtle and quiet or kind. And don't get me wrong, I try to be the kind guy all the time, but when I get really used to people, they hear me be a loud child.
Nice. So you have two different types of first matches, and I really want to talk about them. Talk about the first match that you performed with Chris for your sister and her friends and everything, and then talk about your first. And I hate saying this, but it's always stuck in my head, like your first real wrestling match, essentially. Then.
Right. So, dramatically different because obviously the dry-in experience, amount of knowledge we knew about the business when doing a trampoline little show for my sister and a couple of her friends who were over, we didn't know nothing other than what we watched on TV and played in video games. So we were doing stuff that if you watch Wrestling Psychology, it made none of that real. There was none. We are just going, and jumping off a jungle gym, which happens to be like maybe 2 feet taller than the trampoline was. That was our top rope.
It was a big move, though, dude. It was a big move.
It was a huge move.
Yeah.
But it's always funny when you do a swanton and a guy moves and then they bounce and are able to flop back onto their stomach.
Or back onto the jungle gym.
Yeah, and it's just insane how I think my sister just thought it was so ridiculous, but I could not have had a more supportive family with how it went. And she'd be like, oh, here's my friends are over. You guys want to watch my brother and basically his other brother pretty much do a wrestling match for us on the trampoline? The friends probably didn't give a crud about watching 2 younger kids do...
you can say whatever. Go ahead.
Fake moves.
Oh, that's a bad word. Now we're explicit.
I know, but hey, to be fair, at that point, we really had no idea what we were doing, so we were faking it until we made it.
Okay. I'll give it to that one. Okay.
This was before we had any knowledge on properly how to do it, and it's really, really fake on a trampoline. I'm sorry to say that to anybody who did it backyard, but if you're in a trampoline and you act like you actually broke your back from a choke slam on there, you're the biggest faker there is. And
Touché.
We did that all the time. So we were using cardboard boxes that were folded up as our steel chairs. We were using folded out boxes as tables, and because they made great sounds in our heads. We've replaced kendo sticks by taking toilet paper rolls and shoving them together and then taping them.
That's farther than we have ever went, but okay.
I literally taped it and I said, "Oh, I never seen at the time I didn't know what a kendo stick was because there wasn't really anyone I watched on TV by the time I got into wrestling who really used one. But I did see people use quote unquote lead pipes. So when I had it with duct tape wrapped around it, it looked like in my brain an imaginary lead pipe. And those were used once, and then we threw those away because they hurt so bad. And
is there any footage of this that you can? I won't release it to the public.
I would have to hunt because
I would love to see
videos,
this.
But we had old videos forever ago, and I don't know if YouTube we cannot find them anymore. But they were on YouTube years ago, and now it's we can't find any of our original videos where we were using the boxes and everything, and it upsets me so much because it's cringy, but we get a great laugh out of it all the time,
right?
Because you were laughing at just the idea of, oh, this kid took a bunch of toilet paper rolls, shoved them together, wrapped them in duct tape, and then would say lead pipe, smack someone, and it's nope, we're getting rid of that thing.
I'm jealous that we didn't think of it. Is why I'm laughing.
I'm a very imaginative person, and people found that out really quick. Okay. But that was our first match. We'll throw some air quotes on that match. And our first true step into the independent wrestling, after having a good amount of training and everything, it was me and Christian as a tag team. We went by Dragon's Creed before the now evolved into Dragon's Guild of today. And we wrestled against P.T. Beckham and David X, and they went by the name #ProStatus. And it was in a company called RCW, which was Rampage Championship Wrestling. And it was in the middle of a soccer field during a summer. And we remember like just running down the super long entranceway because they had like a building that was super far from the ring. But like it made you feel that childish wonder of like when you watched Ultimate Warrior charge down an entrance ramp at WrestleMania. Because every time you watch a WrestleMania, the ramp is like 50 times bigger than it normally is on a Monday Night Raw.
Yep.
So we're just like trying not to die from being winded, but we're also so hyped about having our first like true match and everything that we're running, but trying not to go past a sprint or like in between a sprint and a jog to get to the ring. And everybody seemed to really like us right off the bat because the guys who came out before us were like heels and they were hated instantly. They were telling everyone shut up and all that stuff. And when we got out there, everyone's like, oh, look, some small guys. And as soon as we got like up on the ropes, we both did like backflips when we landed in the ring. And everyone was like, oh, we're going to like these guys because, of course, everybody back then loved the high flyer. So a flip got you a million cheers.
Got you over instantly.
Instantly. We got over for just doing basically the closest thing we could to a London and Kendrick with the backflips and stuff. And it was just like we couldn't do it at the same time because the ring was small enough we would have landed on each other. But it got the point across.
Going back, I did remember my question. I'm telling you, I'm that bad. It's like I have Alzheimer's over here. So it's the concussions. I'm not gonna lie. It's really the concussions.
I've luckily never been diagnosed with one, but I'm sure I've had at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, between football in the '90s when everything was just crazy. Your coach would pat you on the ass and say, "All right, go ahead, get back out there," taking fastballs off the face, and then wrestling. Yeah, I don't remember shit. Again, that's just my life. That's what it was. Was there something when you were doing your training that really was kind of a little bit harder? Because I feel you guys knew the psychology. You guys had the taking the bumps down because, God, you were taking them on the dirt. Was there something that, just couldn't resonate with you?
I think the hardest thing when I first got really into the training was, like you said, we really weren't having a hard time doing our bumps. We weren't having a hard time. Like it was getting adjusted to like how to run the ropes properly to where you don't take a million steps between was one thing, but it wasn't terribly hard to learn. It just took a few tries. It took it longer for Chris because Chris is shorter than I am and the ring was big. So he had to like really work on getting so much space covered as he ran. But I think a lot of it was just positioning, getting that ring awareness to really stick when I first got into it. So, and being bigger. I was told a lot of times because I naturally kind of have a slouch as I walk, which a lot of people do. But I was constantly being told to stand up taller, be big, don't let, and like even when we lock up, because naturally when I locked up, I want to look like I'm fighting the guy. So I'm naturally slouching and we're like pushing against each other. And they're like, no, stand tall. You want to look as big as you can, especially if the guy's smaller than you. And I'm like, oh, it's the little things that I never would have thought of. Or put your foot down this way. So when you land, get back up from this, you're going to be in position for this. Or one of these other millions of things that can happen from this position. And I'm thinking, holy crap, I didn't realize how these little things I hadn't thought about forever could just help save so much energy, but also just make everything smoother.
Yeah, a little footstep is part of the storytelling, right?
Exactly.
All right, this is a question where I ask you, who is One Man Zoo Elride? And I have 3, my comparison. Miro / Rusev, however you want to put it. Just because I see a lot of that in your moveset. This is prior to me knowing that you were in Kung Fu or everything, but your feet being taped, your outfit a little bit, just reminded me of Miro. 2. You can see that one? All right.
I can see that one.
2. George the Animal Steel, because your demeanor is crazy as shit sometimes. And that's him. And to keep it, today, 2024, and you brought up one of his family members, essentially, Solo Sikoa. I see Solo. You know, I know you didn't after Solo because Solo is kind of now and this and that and everything, but you can see those three?
Oh, I see all three of those, absolutely. A lot of people have actually been like, man, why are you doing... the one person who had never met me, I got on a show where I had just debuted. All these people are pretty new to me. There's a couple people I've wrestled at other shows with. And the guy goes, wait, you wrestle barefoot? I'm like, yeah, that's how I've always wrestled. And then half of them are going, I don't know how you do that. I couldn't do that. No, screw that. Or they immediately go, oh, we got our own Solo Sikoa. I was like, I'm nothing like Solo Sikoa in the sense of what you're trying to reach out to. But I mean, yeah, I wrestle barefoot. Then, so I can see how a lot of people, I think, just look at me being the barefoot wrestler. So they immediately sometimes compare me to only guys who seem to wrestle barefoot. And it's just not a big deal to me. It's whatever, it happens. But I can see very many similarities of, I took a lot of anyone with animal related gimmicks. If they really played off the animal gimmick kind of stuff, I would look into them and be like, how can I take something from them and twist it to work with me? And with Miro, it's like, I definitely can see myself doing certain things like him when I'm not going kind of like, as you brought up with the animal, being like crazy and snarling and doing all that type of stuff. Like the most basic, like just the wrestler side definitely kind of reflects Miro, when I didn't even realize it really until you said it. I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And,
so who are your big three then?
So I've been a very odd one for people because, like I said, I loved Umaga. Umaga is one of my favorite influences. But the other ones don't really end up being animal-related people. It was I like the luchadors. And I know he was only on for a while before they like changed into another guy under the mask, but I loved Sin Cara when he was on WWE because it was such a unique style to see of like a true luchador besides Rey Mysterio.
Right.
Because you get like, maybe you had like my brain is blanking, like the Matadors, and with like Torito, I don't remember them being called the Matadors. I think I'm saying that wrong.
Oh, I know who you mean. Damn, what the hell were their names? Yes.
See what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
but
dude,
like, we know,
I'm 46 and I have concussions.
Whoever underneath the mask.
Yeah.
But like, there's all these luchador guys, and so like I have been told that a lot of people saw me, like one of my good friends in wrestling who started a few years back with me, said he saw Pentagon and Ray Phoenix in me. I was like, how do you see those two of all people in my style? He goes, because you're small and quick enough to pull off like the flipping and the high flying and the kicking and strikes of Ray, but you're also big enough to where you pull off stuff like Pentagon.
Yeah, I do too. Like, I do too now.
Which I immediately was like, was a huge compliment to me, because I was like, at the time, that was when like Lucha Underground kind of got bigger when he brought that up, and I just never thought about it as, oh, someone's comparing me to a luchador. I never thought I would actually get compared. I just loved how lucha style looks, and I would love to actually learn more of like proper lucha wrestling, because I got a chance to do one of those shows with Maddie last year in Chicago, and that was a fun time, even with the language barriers between us and our opponents. And I just think that style is so unique and cool to watch. So my big three probably were some like really random. It was like Batista, Umaga, Rey Mysterio, Jeff Hardy. Like those were like the guys that would have been like in my top 5 back then.
They all fit though, your character. They, as you're going on, they all fit because you're a big guy, so you can have the power moves. You have the lucha stuff and the Umaga. Yeah, okay. So the question is, and it was written here. You brought it up a couple times. Why no boots?
So the Kung Fu I trained in was, ironically, it was there's not really a proper name for a lot of the Kung Fu styles that I was doing. They're usually just summed up as Shaolin Kung Fu, which is actually a much more diverse term. But I literally would learn as many as styles of animal-based kung fu, which a lot of people have heard, like tiger style and snake and crane, stuff like that. Well, I taught myself mostly a bunch of those styles because a lot of people will dedicate to one. So I'm never going to consider myself a black belt in anything ever. I really won't. I would never disrespect people who do the time of one style to become like a black belt in there. But I would learn bits and pieces from all these traditional things, and a lot of them don't train unless you're like going full on into a monk like monastery to train.
Right.
You don't have a uniform, or a lot of them were about connecting with nature. So I would do it outside barefoot and like just in a pair of shorts and being shirtless because I wanted to be as into it as I possibly could. And by the time I got into wrestling, I did start off with the shoes and everything because I just thought that's the way you do it. And until I really like paid attention to guys like Umaga and everything. So when I first went to the school, I had like, it was when the first time I really saw like toed shoes become a thing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I got a pair because they were supposed to help you like strengthen your feet because of how you'll naturally run with them will be more closely to like how you would be barefoot because they were thinner. So instead of running heel toe, you'll run on the balls of your feet more. So I was wearing those when I first showed up to wrestling school. And people are always questioning, how do you wrestle barefoot? And in reality, I found out it's because when I first started training, I was doing all these things, bouncing off the ropes, running throughout the ring in these toed shoes. So I already basically got the feeling of running around without shoes at all. And it just became more comfortable to me than wearing shoes in the ring. And I ended up trying wearing shoes later on. And I was making small mishaps all the time until I took those shoes back off. And it was like kryptonite to me.
Okay. Well, I always wondered why, because, you have the Samoans and everything. It kind of fits the character, but you're the first, I think, person on the show in the essentially 8 years that doesn't wear boots. So that was a question I was hoping I'd always get to ask. So, okay.
Hey, 4.
Yeah, boom. All right, let's do some nerd stuff, okay?
I'm all about nerd stuff.
Tell me about it. What do you like to do? You get the day off. You're not going to the gym. You're not doing this. You're not doing anything wrestling. What do you do?
I am a animated shows, animation cartoons. I am a nerd when it comes to that stuff all the time. I can literally sit at home and rewatch Avatar: The Last Airbender and Scooby-Doo's and all the old shows from my childhood over and over again, and I would not even bat an eye. I am obsessed with voice actors, and my mom says I have a superpower because I can hear a voice and go, oh, that's this guy from here. But didn't you know he also did this, this, and this? And she's like, how do you hear and recognize a voice so easily? I'm like, I don't know. It's just how I am.
Cartoons, then. I know you said anime. I'm going to spin it to my simple life.
Well, no, like, I absolutely, anime is a huge one. Cartoons is, like, I can, all of it. Yeah. Everything there is, I'm like, oh, yeah, I love all of this stuff.
Like, how far back in cartoons are we talking? Are we talking, like, Tom and Jerry? We're talking the black and white Mickey Mouses? Like, all of that?
I'm talking, like, original Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, like when Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff, like the first Pokemon aired, and all those classics. Like, I didn't get to watch a lot of the original, like, black and white Mickey Mouses and stuff, but that was just because when I was younger, I didn't have the access to, like, channels that really showed all the cartoons. When I was young enough to where I realized, oh, my parents are divorced. They don't live together. This is divorce. And I actually knew what that was. I was like, oh, well, when I'm home, I had, like, the kids WB channel. So every, like, Saturday, I had my cartoons that I could get to really watch. Otherwise, there really wasn't cartoons to watch. If I went to my dad's, he had, like, Nickelodeon, but he didn't have anything else. So that's where I watched, like, Danny Phantom and Full House and those types of shows. I know that Full House isn't a cartoon.
It's close enough.
But it's something that clicked. Yeah. That's something that just clicked with that, like, memory. but then if I went to like my grandparents' house, they'd have Cartoon Network and they'd have Disney Channel. So that's where I got to watch like a lot of the cartoons that I grew up to love. And of course, occasionally I'd find like the Boomerang channel, so Flintstones and the Jetsons and
Woody
Scooby-Doo.
Woodpecker.
Woody the Woodpecker, yes.
Nice. Have you gone back and watched the Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestlings?
I have not.
Oh, dude, look those up. They're definitely
I
on
have to
YouTube.
look that up. I'm writing that down right now.
They are so good. You have Hogan and Piper and Andre and Hillbilly Jim. You know, these are all my era. But it was a Saturday morning cartoon. It was on right before WWF Superstars, then, essentially. So it just leads you into wrestling. They're so good and they're so bad at the same time. But that's, yeah. Once you brought up cartoons, I'm like, I got to ask them about that. So besides cartoons, what else?
I like to read a lot, actually. I don't get a lot of time to read as much lately. But I love comic books and graphic novels as well as actual novels. When I was younger, my favorite like franchise of books or series of books was like the Lightning Thief books, Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Loved mythology, still do. I also am heavily into like Dungeons and Dragons now, so I've been constantly reading and watching and following different things on that so I can constantly get ready to make a game for me, Maddie, and a couple of our closer friends. So that's some of the stuff that really can eat up some of my pastime if it's not wrestling in the gym and all that stuff.
Hey, those are all great. Any video game? I know, Dungeons and Dragons board game. Do you dabble in video games at all or anything?
Yes, I used to play games a lot more, but I have been still play games occasionally with some friends, and I have a PlayStation 5. I've got a PC to play games on. I have a Switch, so I could play some of the newer games that came out for that, and also have it as a good old go-to for if there's a group over and we want to play something like classic like Mario Party and Smash Brothers and stuff like that. A lot of my video game stuff has kind of like died down since I really pushed myself more into my wrestling. But
yeah, well, that's your career. It should.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to make it a career
Right.
besides the shoot job, but you know how that goes. It's a hard trail to follow and maintain.
It really is. All right, let's do some stupid, silly, not so stupid questions. And we'll start with this one. Who'd play you in the movie and what would the title be?
Ooh. Who'd play me in the movie? I've never thought of that type of thing. Ooh. That's such a good question. Well, the movie title would be called From a Whisper to a Roar.
Oh, I like that. All right.
That's when I started putting on myself, and I have a shirt design getting worked on right now with that involved. So that's definitely good. I made that also as a post like a year ago. I just saw the memory on Facebook or something about how it's like, if I had a documentary, it's going to be called The L. Wright Story, From a Whisper to a Roar. Who would play me? I don't know how many people I would think would be realistic enough to fit me. Like, if I could choose just a random person that I would think is cool to play me, it'd be like a obvious like superhero kind of actor or something like Ryan Reynolds, but that wouldn't be realistic.
No, I'm going to hold you to that. You have to pick Ryan Reynolds now. Good.
Okay.
Ryan Reynolds. I love it.
If I had to choose a backup, though, I might say Will Friedle. I like Will Friedle from, everyone knows him more from like Boy Meets World as Eric.
Yeah.
I just met him at a Comic-Con this last weekend, and I feel like he'd be able to pull off a L ride if we had to do a story with a movie.
We'll contact both of them. I get 10%, by the way, but we'll make this. I love From a Whisper to a Roar, though. Like,
thank you.
That's amazing. What is something you like, but most people don't?
That's really tough because I don't know. Like, I'm pretty vanilla when it comes to being just a general person. A lot of people will have more interests than I do. More people just are more adventurous than I am. So I don't know a lot of things that I would have said I could have done and liked that other people wouldn't.
No, I get it.
Some people arguably would say D&D, but like there's a lot of D&D has had
There's
pretty much a resurgence.
People. Yeah.
A lot of people, it's had a huge resurgence over the years. So one thing I could probably go with, at least with my friend group, that some people like express, I'd be interested in doing it, but I have done this. I have skydived once. And I absolutely love the feeling of just that free fall, that freedom of all the wind just blowing as you're just flying through the air. That's probably one thing that a lot of my friends who said I couldn't do it or would be interested, but end up not trying hard enough to like make it happen. I just had the opportunity one day, and I was like, I'm going for it.
You did it with it. You clearly didn't do it by yourself, right? You did it with a trainer.
No, I was definitely like with an instructor. I haven't done it enough times to be able to do it by myself or anything. But I'd love to be able to, if I had the finances to like do it enough to where I could, but be by myself, I would love to. It was such a fun time.
Not knocking wrestling. Jeez, I'm getting a lot of hate on wrestling on your podcast, by the way, just because me being a dick saying stupid things. But not knocking wrestling. Is that the biggest rush you've ever had?
It definitely was a huge rush, but the biggest rush I probably had was when me and Chris had won our first independent wrestling tag team championships.
I'm glad you wrapped it back around to wrestling and keeping me on task.
Like, me and him were at this company, MMWA, in the run out of St. Louis at the historic South Broadway Athletic Club. And we're there for maybe 5-6 months. And we had a tag team title match where we were going against the champions. And we're not thinking anything. We're like, we're going to try to do our best to just keep doing our thing, grinding through whatever until we get that true opportunity where we know it's like, this has got to happen. It's going to happen for us. And next thing I know, like, we are hitting our tag move, which we told people we would only do if we knew we were going to go over or something. Like, we're just going for it. And the guy's not kicking out. And the next thing you know, that bell rings and we like bounce off of him from him kicking out last minute. And our friend slides into the ring, hugging us. The titles are handed to us. And I'm standing up there and with my brothers, and we're all crying because of how happy we are for this moment. And my mom and aunt got to be in the crowd that night. And like a bunch of our close friends happened to be there. So it was just one of the like biggest shocks. And like, there's nothing compared to being able to do something like that in front of your family that supported you the entire journey there.
I just got chills from that story. So I could completely understand that. That's sweet. Hey, we do have a question before my last one from one of our past guests. And here it is.
Hey, this is Maddie Monarch, and my question for you is, what was your most embarrassing moment in wrestling ever?
Most embarrassing moment. The most embarrassing moment for me probably had to be, ironically, when I got ribbed by my own tag team partner and brother, Chris. Because at the time, I wasn't wearing, like, biker shorts or tights. We wore kind of like almost MMA-like shorts. So these things were like skin tight and you wouldn't feel a lot of things if like it hits. And this, I still get frustrated with him at the thought. He had a spray bottle because we'd spray our hair down before we'd go out. And I was in a singles match that day. And he had secretly, as I was talking to someone else, and I had not paid enough attention because I'm like so nervous about going out to do the singles match, that he was spraying my crotch of my gear. So when I go out there, little do I know, it looks like I just pissed myself. And I find out as I look down after I take a couple of bigger moves, like halfway through the match, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with my gear? I'm like, and then I look up and later, closer to the end of the match, and I just see him peeking his head from around the curtain, covering his mouth as he's trying to hold back laughter. And I was like, oh, I'm going to kill him. Which, of course, as soon as I got to the back, he was running out the back door of the building, and I literally chased him outside.
Smart man. Smart man. You get it. Yeah.
It's just you. It's like the only reason it makes sense is because you're the little brother. If it was anyone else, I'd be definitely killing them right now.
Final question for me before we get back into some wrestling related ones. If you could go to dinner with anybody in, lifespan or whatever you want to call it that's ever been alive, who would it be?
Ooh. Robin Williams.
Oh, you just brought it down. He is one of my favorite human beings.
Like, I know that it could be surprising because I could have said Steve Irwin also, which I brought up earlier, but Robin Williams has a place in my heart that bonded me and my older brother really, really closely. Like, I know there was the movie he did of Patch Adams based off The Real Man, and my brother actually had exchanged like postal cards with the real Patch Adams. So it was like one of those cool little things. And I have loved Robin Williams, and I wish he was still around. But that would be someone I would love to just talk with for hours.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite answer that's ever been given. I agree I haven't had any of the interactions your little brother has or anything, but he's just the right kind of human being. Everything. Man, I love Robin Williams. All right, let's bring it back up a little bit. I want to know the best advice you've ever gotten from behind the curtain. And, it could be way back. It could be now. What do you think's the best thing?
Ooh, the best one, honestly, was from recently. I got to do a Bob Evans seminar. And he probably gave me some of the best advice that helped me personally. And it was, don't be afraid to feel silly. Because when you're out here around your friends, yeah, you'll feel goofy. You'll feel like you're being embarrassed or whatever. But when you get out there and you're in front of that crowd, it makes sense to them. Do not be afraid to be goofy as a wrestler.
Yeah, and I love how it comes up every podcast, because you're taking the fans out of the reality, whatever their struggles are. They're spending the money, but they're coming to, a 3-4 hour show just to be entertained. And if you're stagnant, they're going to be like, oh man, all but this match was good. And they'll pinpoint who it was in the match. The silliness, Brutal Bob's right. He is right. Just amp yourself up to that 11, as we say in wrestling, right?
Oh yeah, because I had a hard time getting my gimmick to really show more than just saying what I am. And during the seminar, like, he just had me and one of the other guys in it circle and lock up, and he goes, I can't see what your gimmick is from how you're walking around. Like, I'd get on all fours while I circled and stuff. And he's like, that's great. That's great. But I was like wearing one of my merch shirts, and he goes, I see that design, and it's really cool. It's one of the craziest designs I've seen, and it has me intrigued. The name has me intrigued, but I need you to show me what that is. And when he started saying it, and it just hit me. I'm like, I'm not showing at all what I thought my gimmick is. I need to prove that I'm what I am saying I am without having to say words. And next thing you know, I'm going around this ring snarling and growling and looking like someone who's like would be compared to a werewolf with rabies. I'm going nuts. And the other people in the seminar starts chanting bite. They just go bite, bite, bite. And then I start saying it. And this voice that comes out that I've never done before, at least not for wrestling. And it's like all of a sudden a switch clicked in my brain. And a whole new version of what Elride is became reality.
Yeah, that's great. Bob's amazing, by the way. He's
one of the great people I've met.
How much time do you devote each week for, watching or tape study of pro wrestling?
Oh, that's a good one. Between work and all, I usually spend...
Now, don't throw yourself under the bus saying, an hour and a half.
No, like, I definitely don't put as much time as I could. I'll usually try to go to training once a week. at the actual like dojo where we have the rings and everything. And I'll be there for 4 or 5 hours. And then depending on kind of just on and off free time, I could say maybe a couple more hours. I could probably say about at least 8 hours a week I'm putting in time toward actually doing something in ring versus studying or looking up ideas or something I can do to enhance what I already am doing.
Right, and this is all on top of a real life shoot job. So
yeah,
8 hours is a lot.
A real full time, 40 hours a week job. So it's and then like again, like there's also after that, I'm usually coming home, going to the gym for at least an hour, coming back home to eat, and then by the time I'm done, it's like, how much do I have the energy to really think of wanting to watch wrestling or something? When I'm also like trying to teach myself how to like I got a sewing machine this year past Christmas, so I could finally try to teach myself how to make my own gear. I had been talking about doing that for years, and my mom was kind enough to go out of her way to get a sewing machine for me. So I'm finally trying to teach myself another craft. So it's even more hours going to just trying to make myself look better as a wrestler by learning how to do stuff like this. And it always helps save some funds if you can make your own stuff.
For sure.
Battling the real life versus the wrestling life can be a hard battle to balance.
That, what you just said right there, is a job within itself. You know, you have the wrestling job, you have your shoot job, and then you have the battling job. So, yeah, it's 3 things going on in your world, essentially.
It is. It feels like how it makes you, if you're in the business and you've done this enough, you realize this is what it's like for Superman and Batman in a comic book. It's Superman is Clark Kent. He works a real job outside of being Superman. And then you see why comic books made references why he would have struggles with Lois Lane, because what time does he have with her between trying to save the world and trying to be like a reporter? Like it's the closest thing I think a person can feel, especially at least in wrestling.
Yeah. Hardest question I ask, what would you change in professional wrestling? There's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad, there's some sleaze. You know, what would you want out of professional wrestling if you had that magic wand?
Oh, that's a good one. I would want, if I could, with one, just snap my fingers, could fix something. I would want it to be, I want everybody to be harder, more dedicated in the sense of at a show. Because a lot of shows I've been on, I see people standing around when the show is done, when they need that ring tore down and everyone wants to go home. And the only time I usually don't help with, I guarantee, I always say I will go help set up, I'll help with teardown, I'll help with both if needed. But a lot of the companies I go to say, if you do one, we're not wanting you to do the other. But I hate seeing when people won't do either and they just expect to still be on the shows.
Right.
I want people to have to start seeing or being reprimanded for what they should like put in the work so that you can be worthy of being on the show. Because you should be able to put just as much work in as the people who are brand new are coming in and they're doing all this work on the ring so they can get on that spot. So if you're not doing it, why aren't they taking your spot?
Touché. I love that answer. Thank you for being, honest. Not that you weren't honest to the whole podcast or anything, but actually saying that, because that's the truth. You have people, and I'll throw our organization out there. They show up late, everything's together. They're the first ones out the door then. Damn it, I know you put asses in seats, but what are you doing for the rest of the locker room?
Right. Like, there's been pictures proven of after, Cody Rhodes before AEW happened, to show Cody Rhodes was on the independents and at Ring of Honor shows and stuff like that, where he was sweeping after the show. And that's a guy who's been on television and he's like a multi-generation wrestling star. Why do you think you're any better than a guy like that?
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Thank you. So we kind of talked about what you're most proud of in professional wrestling, because I just read that right there in my notes. So let's move on to What are your goals for 2024? What do you want to knock off? More states? Do you want to get over the East Coast, West Coast? Because you're centrally located. Canada, where do we want to go?
Well, my main goals aren't huge. I started off the business, and I started last year. I had some pretty huge goals, which I think that being by far unreachable because I made them as big, whatever. And I still have. I'm still relatively new to the business because I've only been doing this going on 11 years from the time I started crew training to now, and I'm still just a rookie. There's a lot of people who would not see me and be like, "Oh, I know this guy." So one of the things I really want to do is I want to be able to travel a little bit more, whether that's just even to a state over or two, and whatever, which I might actually get a chance to do because I might be going into Ohio sometime soon for a show. So fingers crossed that works out. But I'd love to travel a little bit more, and I want to be the first person from CHWA, the Cottage Hills Wrestling Alliance, the same company that started in my backyard, to win a heavyweight title somewhere outside of CHWA. That has been a goal of mine since last year, and that's a goal I've kept in mind. And I want to prove, if not to anyone but myself, that I can win something and be worthy of holding that level of respect from the promoters, from the area, from the fans, to be able to hold that title and hold the company on my shoulders because I'm good enough to do so, versus how every title I've won that so far has been on the independent circuit has been with a tag team partner like my brother. And there's nothing against that. And I appreciate my brother, but I want to prove that I can do something more to myself than to others. I want to prove that I can personally be better than my thoughts tell me that I'm not.
Do you see the gnat coming out? Do your thoughts get into your head a lot?
Thoughts have been lately. It's been hard mentally for a lot of things because a couple places it seemed like I finally was going on the right track. They were still looking like there was something good coming up for me, and then next thing I know, a completely different person is in the spot that I thought I was getting pushed for. And it's kind of like when you find out if you're in a warehouse job and someone's telling you, oh, you don't get a promotion from putting in all that work and showing up early and on time and staying late, just for someone else to kind of come in and get that position. And it's one of those things that my brain has been really battling lately. But that's something I think a lot of people really need to know is in wrestling, it is just as big a mental battle as it is a physical one. Because without that drive and the willpower to overcome darker thoughts in your head, whether it's a depression or an anxiety or something of the sort, you gotta be able to overcome those, because if you don't, it's just going to hurt you even more in the long run, and you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to stay stagnant. You're going to plateau. You got to push and prove that you are better than those thoughts. You are better than what those inner demons are telling you you are.
Those long drives, that's where it sinks in. Speaking of experience, you go on the road, you do this, you get the hot dog and a handshake, you're promised this, promised that. On your way back, you're like, man, 4 or 5 hours, that's all you're thinking about then, right?
Right.
Yeah. All right, sorry. Didn't want to go down that path, but yeah.
No, it's all good.
What do you tell the kids? You have kids that are barking with you and snarking with you and all that, but then they come up and say, man, I love everything you do. I want to be, you when I grow up. And what do you tell them when they say, how do I get into the business?
I am pretty forward when it comes to any of kid who's ever asked. I don't have a lot of experiences where kids were like, I want to get into this yet, or they'll say, if they just go, I want to be a wrestler someday, like you, and I'll look them in the eyes and I say, you can do it. If you want to do this, you can do this. You just got to put in that work and you will be able to get to this level and you can probably surpass me. And I will tell them that because there's no reason in trying to cut down a kid, especially when they're so young, because who knows, maybe when they're enter their teen years, they're going to go, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to be that. Maybe they want to still come to shows and they want to go and be a vet or a doctor or a lawyer someday. So when it comes to those moments, it's straightforward. Just if you put your mind to it, I will guarantee you can be where I am, and you can be farther than I am.
Yeah.
And if they ever ask, and if I do come across someone who's maybe a little older and they're like able to go to a wrestling school and they say, hey, how can I get into this? I'll tell them, well, there's a couple people. If there's like my trainer sometimes is on some of the shows I'm at. So I'm like, if you want to talk to a guy about possibly coming down and getting a feel and seeing if you like it enough, you can talk to this man, and I'll even walk them over to him and tell him, or I'll just say, if you really want to do this, here's the school, get a hold of this person and just put in that work, and you can be right in the same ring as I am and any of my friends.
Yeah, that's great advice to one, not to shoot down dreams. It really isn't. If it's a dream of a little guy, like you just said, who knows what's going to happen in that possibly 10, 15 years. But if it's a 17, 18-year-older and you think they have the passion, invite them. Most schools, at least around here, you get the one-day freebie to come and see what you want to do, kind of do a little evaluation. Those are always great opportunities for them. By one, you would know. By taking an ass beating that happens sometimes. And I'm not saying like Ole Anderson, that to try to get you out. But listen, you do some work on your first training.
It's true. You go in there, you take those bumps, and sometimes if you're a person who's brand new and green, like I was faithful and grateful enough, I learned how to do bumps outside of a ring. So I didn't have to do as many as someone who has never learned how. And I've been there for when new people were brand new, came in and were doing that first day try. And I've watched many of those people not come back after that first day. And it's just, people got to realize this is not for the faint of heart. And this is not something that, there's no such thing as play wrestling when you're doing it for real in a wrestling ring. You're going to feel it every single day you wake up after doing those bumps. You're going to feel it. Every time you hit those ropes, you're going to feel it. You're going to have bruises that you don't even know that happened to you until hours later or days later. And you're going to wonder, where the hell did that even come from?
Yep.
And that's just the way this business is. This business is tough. This business is challenging. But when you put in that work and you get there, it is one of the best feelings you can ever have.
Do you consider this? I have one more after this, and then I'll let you do your merch and where you're going to be and all that. Do you consider it a sickness? And I mean it in a good way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wrestling. So, like, I have had those thoughts where it's like, man, I could stop. I could chase down a different dream or career, but it's something, there's just nothing like the adrenaline rush you get when you come out of a curtain or hear that crowd start chanting your name. And it's just something else. It's something that's like, addicting is the best way I can just simply put it, is you get that adrenaline rush, or you get that high from it. And I've had friends who've been in this business and they used to be drug addicts, and they say they've never felt a better high in their life than wrestling after they got rid of like drugs in general, and or they beat alcoholism. And it's like, that's something I'd rather hear.
Yeah.
I'd rather see someone say, I have a better rush from being in this wrestling ring in front of those fans than I ever did from having some form of drug or alcohol in my system. Because I would gladly choose wrestling and help people get into wrestling if it would help them get away from something as dark as alcoholism and being on drugs.
That's an amazing point. That really is. I mean, maybe that's something that some people smarter than me do, and it may, because it really is a rush. Coming in and out of that curtain a few times a night or whatever, having the kids come up, those are the greatest moments. And I always say sickness is a joke, because it is. It's just that addictive feeling that we all love ourselves. We all just want to do what we want to do for the fans, and it's just so much damn fun.
It is. Like, CHWA wouldn't exist if it weren't for our original goal was we wanted something to happen in our neighborhood. We were in a small area. outside, like 30 minutes away from St. Louis. And my home area, it has had its foul side of dark things where there's drugs, addicts, and stuff. Well, there's not a lot to go on around here. You can go bowling, but there's not like anything else really around. You can go to a movie, you can go to a mall, but there's nothing really big around here. So when we first created CHWA, even when it was just a trampoline, we were like, we want to give something for people to do that is healthy and fun and better than any of those darker options. And we are glad to say that we've had multiple people come into our show as fans, and we've watched them get healthier from things. We've watched them go from being clearly under some form of substance to basically the best shape they could be, just because they wanted to be better because of some of the guys they watch in our shows. And it's our DARE program. We want to be able to help pull people away from any of those dark substances and everything in their life, and show that you can escape from real life for a while and watch your fun characters of a guy who calls himself a zoo, and a guy who thinks he's a demon, or a guy and this girl who thinks she's a butterfly. Like, you got to have somewhere to escape sometimes. And that's where we want to be. We want to be a place that people can escape and just have a good night away from all the stresses.
Thank you. You guys are amazing. That was well put. Thank you for saying that. All right, my favorite question now. Okay, and I probably know where it's going to go, so let's just throw it out there. Your dream match ever. Who, where, and what's the stipulation?
I have two opponents I would put into a dream match, and one is Will Ospreay. I have loved him for years before he even got kind of just recently really started blowing up around, at least my area. A lot of people started now knowing him because of him being on AEW, but for a while, I was watching him on New Japan before a lot of my friends knew who he was.
Yep.
And I'm kind of a plain guy. I would really just want a nice, traditional match. No fancy rules with him. And I would love to do it somewhere big. But at the same time, I'd be happy if it was just somewhere like Shea Fitz Arena here in St. Louis, where I could be around my hometown kind of folks who've seen me grow to that point. And if it wasn't him, my absolute all-time favorite wrestler right now besides Will Ospreay is Alex Zane.
Ooh, I know of Alex Zane.
I have loved Alex Zane for a long time. He was doing backyard stuff when I was first getting into backyard stuff. I watched his videos back then, and I have actually had a couple I met him once at a show. And I've made posts on my social media saying someone help book me against Alex Zane because while he's still doing shows in the U.S. before he goes back to Japan. And he has replied multiple times. He liked the posts. He replied saying that he was sure that it'll happen one of these days. And he is one of the coolest and nicest people I've met. And that's another guy who I'd be like, I would be all out happy with having a match with him. And if I could have a match with him, I feel like it'd be cool to have maybe even something as small as like a 20-minute Iron Man match. I would love a match that just really gives us a time to really push each other to our limits, because I feel like that is a man who could push me past what I have already done.
Yeah, and the storytelling. I love Iron Man matches because the story, have it be one fall or 6 in that 20 minutes, there's so many different stories that can be told in that 20 minutes. So I could see you and Alex ripping the shit down. I really could. I mean, you and Ospreay, too. I mean, Will is just, listen, the greatest out there. I don't care. Send me hate, but he's just the greatest out there.
He's got that match now lined up for AEW Dynasty with Bryan Danielson, and I'm like, oh, my God, that match is going to be amazing.
Yeah. He's just putting on, I know he's been in AEW a couple times, but the last 2 matches he's just been there, Takeshita and Fletcher, both of those already, like, match of the year, essentially.
Oh, absolutely.
Now Danielson, poof, he's going to have all 3 top matches of the year, right?
Right? I can't imagine how that match is going to go, but I'm going to be pumped for it the entire time.
Yeah, Dynasty, make sure you spend your money and buy it, for sure.
Right.
All right, give us your socials. Do you have merch? Of course you do. And where you're going to be here in the next little bit.
When it comes to the merch, I unfortunately don't have anywhere that I'm selling it online. I had a pro wrestling tees for a while, but because of some stuff, I ended up closing it. I might open it up again when I have more merch available and more designs finalized. So for now, merchandise is only able to be found through me at shows, which I'm still also having to restock. So funds got to be built up so I can do that. On the socials, it's I go by Elride OMZ on the former Twitter. I call it Twitter still because everybody I know calls it Twitter and not X.
We do too. We do too.
So, plus I'm a one-man zoo. Twitter is a bird. I like the bird better. So, my Instagram is the reverse. It's OMZ Elride. And there's an Elride page on Facebook. Even though it's barely used, I still respond to people on it if they message me. I barely post on there because I'm just usually using my Instagram for more of my wrestling and personal stuff, kind of just mix into one. I'm too lazy to make a second account for wrestling. And my most recent shows I'll be on will be on the 23rd of this month. I'll be at CHWA. I'll be having my first match against Cardi Marty, who is a up and rising newcomer to the wrestling world. He's had a few matches since last year. And then I am going to be at MMWA next month on, let me see, where there's a flyer. I got a flyer over here by me. On April 13th, the second Saturday of April. And there's no idea who I might be against by then because there's no card announcements or anything. So if you guys want to see who I'm against, you got to show up there.
There you go. There you go. All right. Did I forget anything? Do you want to make another announcement? Do anything else? We good?
I think everything was pretty much there that we could think of.
Yeah. We can rehash down the line. We can catch back up after you take over some new states and everything. But you're always welcome on the show. You got my number. Just give me a holler.
Sounds like a plan.
Hey, everybody, this is Gilbert, WWF's longest reigning light heavyweight champion. And you're listening to Can Crushers Podcast, the best guys there are out there.
Where else are you going to find out that the one-man zoo is a cartoon/anime aficionado? By the way, I studied that aficionado word for a while. I probably just messed it up the second time I said it. Man, that is a podcast within itself that we could just break down some cartoons and everything because he was in my wheelhouse, Scooby-Doo, Woody Woodpecker, and all of those. I love those. I hope he does go out and watch Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. Guys, if you've never watched them and you're on YouTube right now, make sure you just type it in. I know some of them are on YouTube. I have VHSs. That I don't have a VCR player anymore, but I still have the VHSs that I would hope to watch sometime. Can you rent VHSs anymore? I'm going to have to transition those over to DVD is what I'm going to have. Nonetheless, One Man Zoo, I love it. And yeah, pray for my wife tonight because the beginning of this about snakes and everything might be a bad night for her. But I love the story. I love the story, and he's very open about, listen, he considers himself backyard, because that's where, he got his feet wet in professional wrestling, and then transitioned to the training, and then what he's done in the business, and best moment winning those tag straps, and those are the stories. That's why I love doing these spotlight editions with independent stars. Where you can hear them elsewhere. Where else? Guys, I love bringing these to you, so continue to like, subscribe, and all of that cool stuff that you can do on any platform that you listen. And don't forget, Ask Can Crushers is coming up. You can DM us on any of our social medias. You can drop us an email at cancrusher69@gmail.com. Or if you want to be part of the broadcast, it's 814-299-6687. Get those questions in on our message board there, and then we'll play them on the show and answer them on the show. Remember, just because you're trash doesn't mean you can't do great things. It's called a garbage can, not a garbage cannot. Make sure you tell your loved ones you love them, because you never know.